Hello guys and welcome to Onion Skin Game Animation. I'm here today with Ryan Duffin. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good too, thanks. Thank you very much for accepting to do this interview the second time because the first time got lost in limbos. So yeah, Ryan Duffin, first can you introduce yourself? Who are you?
Sure. I don't remember if we went with the shorter or long version of these. Do you have a preference?
No, as you want.
Okay. Well, as you know, as you learned last time, I give way longer answers than I'm asked. But I've also been thinking about this a lot because as I interview people for jobs, and then it's like we'll have an hour time slot, and then they'll like spend 10 minutes explaining what their resume is. So I'm like, well, okay, we just lost 10 minutes. But okay, so I'm Ryan Duffin. I've been doing game animation since 2001. I've worked at a bunch of different places on a bunch of different games. The notable ones would be Spider-Man 2 back in the day, Killzone 2, Ultimate Spider-Man, Alan Wake, Battle, and then all the Battlefield since Battlefield 3, and also briefly on Anthem. So I'm currently the animation director at the Initiative in Santa Monica, working on secret stuff.
Haha, can't tell.
Can't tell.
Well, from what you say, I've checked your resume as well on LinkedIn, of course, and it's almost 20 years in the business for you. So I guess you've seen the medium of game animation evolved through the years. It's funny you mentioned Spider-Man PS2 with the latest one from Insomniac that came out. So how has it been for you to witness that evolution of game animation?
It's pretty crazy. I think one of the craziest things is that like even probably even now there are people who are still making game animation the way that we did it on Spider-Man 2.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of just somebody makes a bunch of animations and then they save that file, they export it somewhere, and then somebody totally different takes those animations, puts them in a text file. They get compressed without anybody looking at it. They get used in all kinds of applications that aren't. So people still do that, and that is literally how we did things 20 years ago or 19 years ago. So that's a little crazy, but it's the spectrum. To me, that is like if some games had characters that were modeled with ZBrush, and other games had characters that were modeled like with 400 polygon, PS1 specs. It's just not as obvious of a difference, but like the quality gap in like the best games animation right now and the worst games animation is enormous. There's like enormous. So yeah, I'm probably not actually answering your question, but I would
a large
say
question.
to see the like the cutting edge stuff, that is amazing. I think it's definitely been, I think, more evolutionary than revolutionary in some ways. There's some revolutions. There's things like motion matching and things like that are all like cutting edge tech that hasn't proven to be a replacement for the old way. Those aren't, to me, like, oh, this is the ZBrush that nobody's ever going to do it the old way again. I'm not convinced of that yet. But what is impressive is the things that used to take days or months or hours now take minutes sometimes. It's almost like the reverse of what happened with ZBrush. Like it used to take a couple days to model a good character, and now it takes a couple of months to model a good character. But now it's like if you're taking 2 months to make like a move set for a character, like, ooh, that's too long, man. Like, how are you going to do that fast? That depends on the character. I'm sure Insomniac's Spider-Man's moveset took much longer than 2 months.
I guess.
As it should. But yeah, just the speed at which we're able to work, the way that, I mean, like, well, I could say this. I mean, I posted a picture on it. I'm like shooting motion capture, and it's just like, oh, I'm gonna put on this accent suit and run home and run around and strain all my muscles, and then the next day I've got like a game's worth of animations. Like that's the incredible part. How fast we can work. It's one of the incredible parts. There's so many incredible parts.
I'm curious. You spoke about Spider-Man PS4 from Insomniac, and you worked on the famous original Spider-Man the movie 2 on PlayStation 2, the one that initially mastered the swinging mechanic till Insomniac came. But I'm just curious. Your opinion, no, just your personal feeling about comparing the two, the one you worked on and Spider-Man PS4.
No, I worked on.
Did you play it?
On 4 Spider-Man games. Back all around there, but yeah, Spider-Man 2 was the one that people remember the most. I did play. I didn't finish the Insomniac one. I have played the Insomniac one.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's absolutely the best Spider-Man game since then. There was clearly a focus on the swinging and the flow of it. I think the big privilege of working on that game was to see like what happens when you really double down on like have a vision for your game and what are you really trying to accomplish here. I think a lot of people just start making a game and it's like, oh, this is going to happen and this is going to happen, but there's not like a clarity of vision that is driving what it's supposed to be. And with Spider-Man 2, the old one, it was like we were making Peter Parker Pro Web Swinger. This was in the heyday of Tony Hawk, and my first game was Kelly Slater Pro Surfer and like all of this Activision sports stuff. We're like, the fantasy of Spider-Man is swinging. Nobody else has that. So you can make like the combat of that game was, I don't know. I mean, my friends made it.
I liked it. I liked it from what I remember.
Yeah, it was good. I'm not saying it was bad, but it's not a game that is remembered for like the amazing combat of it. It's not like a Batman Arkham or something like that. It's like it was a good third-person combat game, but the swinging, you fucking nailed the swing. I can swear. Can I swear?
Oh yeah.
Okay, cool. I think I asked you this last time too.
Yeah. You can.
But yeah, I'll try not to overdo it. We started with a gray box version in New York, like literally, I think 1/3 scale, and when I say we, this was mostly like our lead engineer, our lead animator Jim Zachary, lead engineer was Jamie Fristrom, and then lead designer Tomo Moriwaki, and those guys were like the three of them were like, let's get the feeling of Spider-Man. And then that was their only focus. They weren't thinking about the story. They weren't thinking about the graphics. They were thinking about the feel. And I think that's a mistake that a lot of games make, is just like going wide too fast and not knowing like what's the thing that we're going to do better than anybody else.
Yeah, I think it paid off on that Spider-Man 2 game, definitely.
I think so too. I think it was a good game to have worked on. One thing that about Spider-Man 2 that I think is interesting is to go back and look at it, and it's like, okay, it's a 16-year-old game. No,
wow, yeah.
17? No, 16. It was 2004. And then the next year we shipped Ultimate Spider-Man on largely the same engine, but it was a comic book based game. And we did a lot of cool stuff. Like I won an Annie Award for that. Like our whole team got Annie Awards.
Cool.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
But we did a lot of cool groundbreaking stuff and motion graphics for cinematics of like these living comic book panels. And it was super cool. But if you go back and look at videos of that, which only came out a year after Spider-Man 2, it's such an argument for stylized art direction rather than like what sort of the default is of like make it look as good as your current console will let you. That ages so fast. And Ultimate Spider-Man is like, it doesn't look that old. Like going back and playing like Okami versus going back and playing, Siphon Filter on PS2 or something. It's like one holds up a lot better than the other one does.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that's a lesson that a lot of game developers haven't fully internalized yet. The real power of art direction.
Yeah. We're going sidetracked, but as the Unreal Engine 5 demo just came, I was thinking about that, but maybe that's for another time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like I said, I haven't watched the demo yet because it's been pretty slammed here, but I think it's always going to be Epic's responsibility when they make an engine to like show, like, I mean, if you're selling a Corvette, the commercial for the Corvette is not that Corvette sitting in traffic. And it's like, what is the thing that you're probably never going to do in this car? Go nuts. So like, it is in their best interest. And people are like, oh, photoreal, whatever. That doesn't help gameplay. That's not the point. The point is like, let's make let's make this overkill tool. So if you can make something that looks like that demo, imagine what you could make of something that is stylized or super art driven or whatever. So I'm pumped, even if more people don't make games like that.
Yeah, I agree. I'm very curious to what developers will do. So we talked about to continue on the evolution of the game animation medium. You worked a lot on Battlefield, the Battlefield franchise, which has been around for quite some time now. I know I started with the third one, but it's pretty old franchise. And I was wondering regarding game animation in that game. Did you see an evolution of your animation with each installment of the franchise?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, the first game, I had worked on a couple of shooters before that. Killzone 2, which was kind of the first place where I really got an appreciation for really paying attention to the first-person experience. And then I worked on an unreleased shooter at another Finnish game studio in 2008 and 9. So on Battlefield 3, I had a lot of thoughts about making a good first-person experience. I learned a lot from the people at DICE about how they'd been doing it before, and so I think the first gun that I worked on there, I took probably a month on it. Right off the bat, it was I remember because I almost got this tattoo when I left DICE of the last gun that I animated there and the first gun I animated there.
Oh yeah.
And it was the Remington 870, and it was fairly complicated because they had their tech the tech only got better in the time that I was there, but it was good tech to start. And so where some games might have boom, 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 start, loop, 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 end, we had a system of start. When I got there, had this system of you're going to pop open the shotgun and breech load the first round, click, and now you've got one in the chamber. So if you fire, you're out of action for less time, and it's actually how shotguns can work. So then you load up the rest of them, and that's there's a time that is different for the first round than it is for all the other rounds. And so I was oh, well, this is new and complicated for me. But that's what enabled all the cool stuff that I ever did at DICE of just that sort of technical approach to doing animation. And so for Battlefield 4, that was coming back to a thing that I don't give enough credit to, and I forget sometimes, is that between Battlefield 3 and 4, I worked on Medal of Honor Warfighter, which was a 55 Metacritic rated game, but the guns were good. And the thing that they wanted to get right more than anything was the guns. There was gun nut people in the studio who were this is the most important thing. It should be for me and for this team, but I don't know about the whole team. But I think we did a really good job of that, and I learned a lot about guns. I learned a lot about shooting, talking to professional soldiers. But the biggest thing is that we had this crazy ambitious customization system. It was basically just somebody took a bag of parts and dump it out on the table. Make this gun work with this grip and 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 this big magazine or this small magazine. And I'm but we figured it out. And in the end, it was I took a thing that had been in there for Battlefield 3. It's here's how we do a foregrip. You do this on video, right? Does me making gestures help?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I know, just like last time, I'm giving you way longer answers than you wanted.
No,
Sorry, this is how I do things. So I don't have a gun here, but I have a bass guitar. So imagine that this is my gun, and this is the animation set. And then I would do, so on Battlefield 3, we had this foregrip system that was a single additive pose, and you've got a foregrip. So the only thing that is different on a foregrip gun is you have frame 1, frame 2, simple additive. That plays over everything. And then in the animation sequence, when I'm I'm going to reload my base, I turn off the blend pose. I just blend out to the regular one. My hand is in its normal shape. I reload the base, and then I blend back to the foregrip. So what I did on Medal of Honor was take that, and they're basically asking, excuse me, I just ate right before. They're basically asking for this gun you have to hold this way, but then you put on another part and you hold it this way, and then sometimes some people hold it this way and some people hold it this way and this way. I'm but I just took the foregrip system that already existed and just expanded that into, well, we need more slots. We need more additive poses that can be applied on these animations. And then I did the same thing on the right hand, because we have like, well, here's a pistol grip for this gun, and now we have a rifle stock, and it just needs to be bloop and bloop. And so I built up that. And now it's like, okay, I can hold this gun in any way possible, and as long as it uses the same reload animations, then I can do that. I'm not totally way off topic, but hopefully this is useful for somebody. Okay. So then it's like, well, this is basically any gun at this point that's sort of in this basic silhouette. All we need to do is change the reloads. And so on the reloads, we had 24 guns in the game, but 5 of them were basically M16s, like the same basic body. So it'd be like if this base had a different neck or different knobs or something like that, but you hold it the same. So instead of animating an M16 5 times, I set up this thing of like, well, what if all the M16s, we also had these different factions for different countries. And we're like, well, what if all the Marines reload all their M4s the same way, and all the JTF2 soldiers reload theirs all differently, but all the same? If you've got an M4 or an M16 or a HK416, you reload it all the same. The difference is the soldier, not the gun. So we built this whole system for like, well, depending on which list you are, you're going to either reload it like this and then, or you're going to reload it like this and like that, or whatever. So we made it so the left hand, the right hand, and the reload were all totally modular. And this was all based on BF3 tech.
Okay.
And then it just got more and more crazy from there. So Medal of Honor is the one where it's basically sink or swim. Like, you better learn how to make all these crazy ass guns work. And I did. And so that influenced a lot of the stuff I wound up doing later with, like, as it got to like Battlefield 1, these are back on track. These are tools I knew really well now. And I was like, okay, well, now I'm a little bit bored. How can I like entertain myself and challenge myself?
Yeah.
And at the same time, Battlefield 1 comes along, and these guns are like crazy Rube Goldberg machines. And like, it's a fascinating, even if you're not into guns, like the guns of Battlefield 1 are actually really interesting.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So then it was like, okay, this thing is bizarre. Let's use this as an opportunity to like show people this bizarre thing working as it actually worked. And like all the little pieces that actually make it happen actually work. And so we tried to make it like each, and some people would be like, why? Oh, just do that. Just make a fast reload. And okay, well, every other game does that. So what if we just make our reloads like a little bit of a history lesson too?
Yeah, that's a good point you're mentioning. This is that's my next question. Battlefield is mostly the latest episode, so 5 and 1, I guess. They're famous because, you know, there are old weird guns, as you say, and this is also an IP that has this sense of history realism. I'm putting into brackets because let's call it realism, historic realism.
It's a spectrum.
Yeah, it's large. But at the same time, it's also a multiplayer game mainly that has to be, fast-paced. So I was wondering, how did you tackle that in animation? Getting this proper reload for a weird historic gun and getting something that is snappy and feels great.
I think the most useful thing in how far we were able to push it was the quantity of guns that we had in the game, and I think if you were to start from scratch, like an animator and programmer and designer were to start trying to make that game, I don't know that they would. We had a lot of people who have been making Battlefields for a while at this point, so I think we were all in that mindset. It wasn't a big deal to make like, this gun's going to be pretty slow because we've got 100 of them.
Yeah.
Like, there are fast guns in this game. You have options. If you think this our effects artists always be like, oh, damn it, Ryan, this reload's too slow. I'm like, use another fucking gun. Like, there's options. There's so many options. But it was like, well, but you like something about this gun, clearly. Otherwise, you have the option to switch and you don't. The thing that I had written down for this question last time was like, I think authenticity is free backstory, and that's when you have a game with like 10 guns or 15 guns, like 20 guns, like even like the original Modern Warfare. I don't know what the count is on the new one, but like the way that I did some of the things on Battlefield wouldn't have been right for a game like Modern Warfare, because the spread isn't big enough. Like those guns had such specific balanced archetypes that it totally makes sense. It's like, here's the single shot, here's the 3-round burst, here's the long reload but high, here's a high rate of fire but lower caliber bullet, here's low rate of fire, higher caliber bullet. But it's very much a paper scissors rock kind of thing. It's oversimplifying it, but when we have 100 different guns, it's like you have to, like, it becomes important to make them actually stand out from each other.
Yeah.
So that's where authenticity is free backstory. I like to say, like, use it where it doesn't get in the way of gameplay. Like, if you can, some people are like, oh, nobody cares about that. Like, but if we do it that way, if we do this thing that you think nobody cares about, but it doesn't actually make your experience worse, then why wouldn't we do that? Why wouldn't we do that for the people who do care about it? And this was a rant I had at GDC, I think in 2016. It was like my first micro talk was basically like, care about how much they care. If I make a soccer game or football, I don't know anything about that. So if I'm like, well, I'm a game developer and I think nobody cares about this in football, it's like, I would get my ass kicked, because a lot of people know these things and they care about them very much. Sports is just the best example, because it's a popular thing, but people know about guns. People know about, I have a hard time playing racing games because it's like, oh yeah, put on this sway bar, it'll make you brake better. I'm like, that's not what they do. That's stupid. Like, it ruins it for me. So if I'm
That's
doing,
what
like,
I mean.
yeah, if I'm doing, I'm gonna keep using my base as a stand-in here.
Your base
So-
gun.
Yeah, my if I'm okay, so I'm a bassist, I'm a bad bassist, but if I like play a video game and somebody has modeled a bass, but they're not a bass player, and somebody's like, oh, nobody cares, and then I see that like all of these strings are the same thickness,
Yeah.
that's like, or the, I mean, there's other details that are like, well, this is on the 3rd and the 5th and the 7th fret, and maybe somebody do it on the 2nd and the 4th, and like, but did it cost you any more to do it right? Does it get in the way of your game's vision to make this string thinner than this string? And that is the only time, like, I hate when people call game developers lazy. I will call game developers lazy when they do this. It doesn't, if it's like, well, it's going to cost 10 times more to make these strings accurate, like, okay, well, let's not do it. But usually it's like, no, just scale this down 50% on 2 axes, and then you've got it. It's not caring. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered your question. I'm just ranting.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. How did you balance realism, authenticity with gameplay?
I think it's things like getting aligned with designers about what a thing's supposed to do. Like, if somebody wants a really fast reload, don't pick a revolver. Like, we have guns that like automatic pistols took over because they reload faster. So use one of those. But if you want a revolver, it should take more time, it should pack more punch, and like, it should be a unique thing. One of my favorite guns, oh man, I've just tangents all over, I'm sorry.
Go on.
Okay. One of my favorite guns in a video game is the Scout from Counter-Strike, like Counter-Strike 1.6. And that was a gun that people use. Like, if you get killed with a Scout, like, you know that guy's good. You know that person's good. Because if they use an AWP, it's like, oh yeah, one hit kill, whatever, anybody can do that. Kill you with a Scout, you know that person is skilled. It was not statistically the best gun. It was statistically the worst sniper rifle. And so when you get killed with that, it's like, oh, they got me. They totally got me. So I love things that are like, the game shouldn't just be these kind of games. If Counter-Strike was just Scouts, it would suck. But there should be that option for the person who's like the discerning gentleman.
Yeah.
Of like, no, I'm gonna make sure you know that I got you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna use the revolver that has the 4-second reload. I'm gonna use there's I can't remember. This came up recently. When it was actually after I played Battlefield 4, after the last time we talked. On Battlefield 4, like, me and our designer had been talking about reload times, and we had so many guns at this point, it's like, it didn't matter that much. So we added this one shotgun that was it was the Dow 12, and this thing is a giant revolver full of shotgun shells, and you like load a shell, and then you have to turn a key to load this giant carousel of bullets. So I took our animation system. I was like, okay, we're gonna do this correct. And he was hardcore gun guy. He's like, yeah, let's do it. I'm like, okay, so you plop, click, plop, click, plop. It's got a 17-second reload animation if you empty the gun.
Okay.
But if the gun's full, you got boom, 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 and 4 guys are dead. And now you have to run and hide. So like the risk reward of it was kind of built into the fact that like this reload animation is terrible, but the rate of fire is awesome.
Yeah.
That's what I like. I think if you the thing I was starting to say with the blank slate of Battlefield 1 is that I don't think that people would start with those kinds of extremes. I think that the tendency would be to make 100 guns that are like, oh, this is slightly fast and this is slightly slow. It's like, no, go crazy.
Yeah.
There's balance issues when you have 100 guns.
But you're right. That's probably one of the key things of that makes people enjoy Battlefield. I think because it can lead to crazy epic moments with those guns.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Like you jump into a Battlefield game and yeah, there's definitely the popular guns. I've seen the stats on this game versus that, and they do get rebalanced a lot in DLC, partially because of that. But you don't jump in and it's like 50% of people are using the same gun. You might see 20% using like, well, okay, that gun's kind of OP. But there's still a spread. There's always a big spread, and I love that about the franchise.
Yeah. There are some secret or Easter eggs reloads that are super famous in the Battlefield IP. Any chance you did one of some of them?
Yeah. So Battlefield had always had some funny idols and stuff in it. There was stuff of like, I think it was Battlefield 2, or maybe it might have been Bad Company 2. But like if you had a gun idle for too long, or there's one of like a knife and you like throw it and balance it on your finger and stuff like that. So the goofy stuff was in there already. The secret reload thing came out of one of those long revolver animations. I love revolvers. I don't think I mentioned that on here, but it's like they're interesting because there's so many ways to use them. There's so many different kinds of revolvers, and so where like an automatic pistol might be like click, 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 and they all kind of work the same, especially modern ones. Revolvers are very different. Even modern revolvers, or even if they're the same, they can be handled differently. So there was a reload animation that I wanted to do back on the Magnum 44 for Battlefield 3. And it's this technique that was like, you have the gun and then you like reach around and you pop the cylinder out and you dump them out with your thumb from the regular ejector. This is like a modern style revolver. And then you take out a speed loader and you pop it in. So years later on Battlefield 4, we added this gun, the Unica 6. And I was like, I haven't done that reload. We eventually didn't do that on Battlefield 3 because it's like, that's an old, it's like 1930s tactical revolver handling, and they stopped doing it because Magnum rounds meant that the barrels got so hot that when you did this, when you reached through, you'd burn your hands.
Oh man.
But in Battlefield 5 and 4, everybody had gloves, or well, whatever. I didn't care. That's one that's like, well, okay, that's not realistic. But okay.
Yeah.
So I did that reload for the Unica, which was the last revolver we added to Battlefield 4, and yeah, it was the last one. So I did that reload, and I just started going straight ahead. I did not pose to pose this. I was like, okay, here's this is the reload that I've always wanted to do. So I did blah blah. You dump the bullets, and then I was like, our speed loader model. I don't want to use the same speed loader model. We're going to make a different one. We haven't ever done a ring style speed loader yet. So I this is my fault. I went to our modeler. I'm like, hey, can you make one of these instead of the old one? The old one was just like this little pinch one that you could just drop. Well, this was like a ring. So now it's stuck on his finger. Didn't think about this. I was just so excited to do the reload that pulls it out. It's got this ring with these bullets on it. It goes click. Bullets are in the gun. Strips them off. Bullets are in the gun. Rings on his finger. Like, and now I'm at like over 3 seconds into this reload animation. I'm like, ugh. So I'm like, oh, fuck it. Okay, so he flinks it off and then flicks it closed, and then so then that wound up being the 4.1 second reload animation, but the Magnum was only 0.1 seconds slower that I'd done for BF3, and was still the one in BF4. So I did that, and it was a very polarizing reload. Some people were like, oh, that's really cool because it's like sort of Flash, and some people were like, oh, it's kind of like jaunty and like dainty fingers, and I was like, fuck you guys, I'll show you. So on one Friday night, I mean, it was all in fun, but I was like, I'll show you a silly reload. So one Friday night, I stayed late in the office and spent a couple hours making this like stupid, didn't have really much of a plan. I just made a dumb reload, and it was like, and you push in the bullets and like tap them on the butt, and then I don't even remember what else it did, but checked it into the game, and then I put it into the game of like, there is a 1 in 10,000 chance of this ever playing on an empty reload only. So if you fired all 6 rounds, you have a 1 in 10,000 shot of seeing it. And the idea being that like somebody would see it and be like, what just happened? And then they'll never see it again in their life. But of course, this is the age of video. So like a few days later, like it goes live, and one of the people I know from the community messages me and is like, hey, what's up with this? I just saw this. You can see this gameplay video, and he's like running around shooting guys, and this reload happens, and then the character stops. He's like, what? The first thing he does is try and do it again, and then it never happens again. I'm like, oh, you found something. So we set that up. It was actually like, when I checked it in, I didn't know if it was going to play at all, because the way that we randomized numbers didn't go to the thousandths place.
Okay.
It was like a 1 in 10,000, but I could only see, I would type in 0.001, and then it would just round up to 0. I'm like, oh, well, okay. So we'll give it a shot, but it worked. And then Hardline grabbed that same 1 in 10,000 thing, but they made like awesome animations.
Oh yeah.
And then that's where like the silly ones came from. And then the real nut punch of that was when people were like, oh, I wish Battlefield 4 would do this. I'm like, I did. But
that must have been so fun to animate. I mean, it's really cool to just do that straight ahead, even more.
The animation, it's not a good animation. It's pretty crap. But what was really fun about that part of Battlefield 4 and also later Battlefield 1 was that there was a relationship between the community at that point. Like, this was a reaction to YouTube comments of like, oh, okay, you want to throw it down? Let's throw it down. And it was a really cool thing for those two games of just going back and forth, and like people would find, I was really active on Reddit at the time, and people were like, hey, what's this? And I'm like, oh crap, that's a bug. And then the next patch, it's fixed.
Okay.
And it was just really cool to be able to have that sort of back and forth with the audience, where games I'd worked with previously was like, you just fired off into space, and then that's like the best case of back and forth of audience. There can also be less good actions.
For sure. So now I guess I want to add to something that is more serious, unfortunately. But so you've done a lot of FPS animation. You just talked about Battlefield, so it's keyframe animation, I suppose. It's not mocapped. But you've worked also with motion capture. So I was wondering, for you, what's the main difference between the two? It's a bit of an inspired question, but I like to ask it. And also, do you think keyframe and motion capture are complementary?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I'll answer the last part first. I think you cannot make. I don't want to say you cannot. The best use of motion capture is for an animator to work with the motion capture. There's tons of great GDC talks on this. I think Christian Johnchuk's is one of the better ones that he really had. Here's what raw mocap looks like. Here's after the animator gets to it.
Oh yeah, the MoFrame thing, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's funny because it's like most of us do that. It was cool that he coined a phrase for it, but it's like, and the guy that he was using for mocap too was insane. That is such a good talk. But it wasn't just, I think the default is like, oh, you take the mocap and then you speed it up because designers want it faster. It's like, no. You make it so like you make it snappier, you make it punchier. So cleaning up mocap data, cleaning up is kind of a broad term. Like cleaning the data is something that, you know, a trained monkey can do. If it's processing is not a thing that trained monkeys can do. But if you're just going through data and finding like Euler flips and stuff, it's not a big deal. But to take a mocap performance and make it look like what the actor intended it to be in the way that is conducive to your gameplay, whether it's first person or third person, or if you're doing a top-down game, like you're gonna have to push it more than that actor probably could. So I don't see them as I see them as 100% complementary. Like, and to the first part of your question, I think animators, especially newer animators, this is me being an old man here, but I think newer animators have this sort of, newer artists in general have this obsession with the blank canvas, and I think it's a mistake. No, I think it's a mistake. This is me speaking as a commercial artist, and that is not about like, oh, make money, but it's like I want output. I want to make as many things as possible. Like the time spent. There was that Twitter comment about the Unreal Engine, and somebody mentioned like, oh, imagine spending 6 months to make that building, and you handcraft all the nails, and you just fly by. And like, I feel like I don't feel bad for that. Like, if that is how they made it, and that is not how they made it. If you're making games that way, you're doing it wrong. You're being inefficient. It's just artist wank. So I think there is an obsession with the blank canvas, and I had a talk. I think this was last year in Norway. It was like in order to this is I think a Carl Sagan quote, or maybe Stephen Hawkins. In order to bake an apple pie from scratch, you must first create the universe. Like, so there's I think I did mention this on the last interview, that like friends who I will not name see these amazing reference videos that these animators shoot, and they're like, why didn't you put on an accent suit? What, you just threw away, like you got great motion, and now you're gonna like, okay, now I'm gonna recreate that. Like, you already had that. You built something and you tore it down just so you could say you built it. It's like, so I think when you get into that, how animators can work with mocap mindset, you think of it as like you're sculpting. You're taking clay and you're shaping it into what you want it to be. And it's not like you're not a sculptor just because you didn't go out and dig up your own clay. Like, it's a foundation, but it's like noise to build up upon. And so I really, I don't know. I think that thinking that just because something is motion captured means it's going to be like a super realistic facsimile of human motion is folly. Simon Unger, a friend of mine, he gave a talk on he was the animation director on Dauntless, about how he was using OptiTrack mocap to capture monsters, and it's just like using I think markers on the hands and the feet and on the body and the head, and he wasn't getting like, you know, elbow data and stuff like that, but he's getting the boom boom, he's stomping around the mocap stage, and then he transfers it to this owl bear or whatever, and it's like, damn dude, that looks good, you got all that for free. That's like a week's worth of animation you just captured in a minute.
Yeah, and that's just a tool.
Yeah, it's just how every one of us, every creative person, I think, has more output in them than they will ever put out. And so being really focused on like how you can, are you making this animation because you wanted to craft the keyframes? Because, well, okay. Or is it because you're trying to make a performance that's awesome? And I think worrying about, now there's validity to like worrying about where it comes from, because like, oh, I took the Mona Lisa and I drew a mustache and now it's art. It's like, that's stupid. And I think some people think that that's what mocap is, but you could do so much to it to turn it into what you want. And once you get used to shaping mocap, then I think you realize how much of an effect you as an animator have on it. And it's then you don't feel like a failure or an imposter because you're starting with somebody else's work.
Yeah, you're not less of an animator by using mocap.
Exactly. Mocap is a force multiplier. That's how I think people should see it.
Yeah, you're saying force multiplier. It's interesting because motion capture, at least for the last generation, so the PS3 and Xbox 360 era, as far as I can remember, was like the big leap in animation, kinda. So I was wondering, what do you think will be the next big leap? We're talking a lot about procedural animation or that motion matching thing. Is it magical, really?
Yeah, I don't believe in magic, and I think magic bullets are for executives and conspiracy theorists. There's not change will be incremental. New systems will come. They will solve old problems and introduce new problems. I think that is the one thing that doesn't change. Like that's the nature of progress. I think it's going to be the future of animation is a combination of all these things. Like motion matching absolutely has a place in the future of animation, but processes have to change. Even like the stuff that we were doing at DICE, which I think was fairly systemic driven and pretty high quality, I think. There's a changed relationship between like where the role of the tech artist and the programmer and the designer and the animator is. And that's scary for some people. It's like sometimes it's like, oh, you're gonna let an animator have that much power. It's like, well, yeah, because we did really cool stuff, but then it's a changing dynamic from like, well, it used to be that the designer controlled really how it played back, or the programmer, or whatever. So it does require different workflows, and future animation tech, I think, is going to be the same. There are things about motion matching that are like, if you just tune your game the same as you tuned it before, you might not really get much of a benefit out of motion matching. Where a game like For Honor that's like chunky and heavy and really showcases animation, it's awesome. But that wouldn't necessarily work for like, if somebody makes the next Quake game and you're running around at 30 miles an hour, like, well, motion matching is not going to help you that much.
Yeah.
Maybe in bits it actually will, but that's actually the better point. So like, you're not just going to be like, oh, we don't have anagraphs anymore, we have motion matching. I think what you're going to have is anagraphs with motion matching nodes. Like turn animation should be solved with motion matching, or start stops, and the things that are just like the grunt work that would be better handled by machine learning, probably motion matching. Procedural correction, runtime retargeting, and relative IK are all things that I had written down for this.
Yeah.
Ubisoft does a lot of GDC talks that showcase this technology of like, for the longest time, we've just lived with video game characters that are all the same height. The men and the women are the same height, and all the men are the same height, and all the women are the same height. And it's like, and then we know why. But tech exists to make somebody who's 5'5" punch somebody who's 6'6" in the face with animation from two 6 foot tall performers or 2 5 feet tall performers. That's relative IK. Being able to do runtime retargeting and stuff like that, I think is a big thing. And once you see what it looks like of like walking into a crowd, and like some people are tall and some people are short and some people are middle sized, and then it's like, then you realize like how we've sort of accepted a lower quality in games. The other thing that I it's like my pet platform here is that games have had access to the best animators in the world since video games existed. Like, you could hire 9 Old Men and Pong overlapped, or these are just blurry timelines, but you can make beautiful animation long before you can make beautiful video games. And so when people think that making video game animation better is a matter of like, let's hire better animators, like, that's a thing. Obviously you need good animators to make good animation. But it's not just like, let's do the same thing this old crappy way with these amazing people, and then wonder why it doesn't look better, or you do this amazing run cycle and then they stop and their feet slide. Like, that drives me crazy. I think the future of animation is like addressing that your performance is only as strong as the weakest link. Like, if you're watching a movie and Robert De Niro is given some amazing monologue and then his face glitches out for a second, that's what game animation is right now. not glitching, but like you
Yeah,
see the errors. And I think when we could show people like, here's what it looks like without those errors, it will not be accepted. Like that quality divide is going to shrink because it's not going to be okay to have shitty foot sliding and stuff anymore.
Yeah. I really enjoy how you. Oh, sorry, you wanted maybe to add another thing you maybe wrote down?
Did I? Let's see. Yes. Oh no. I think that, one more bit about that point.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, go on.
I think that is an important thing. That's not like, oh, people don't understand animators. This is the agenda for animators to push. Nobody else is going to push that. The gameplay animator. The thing that I wrote down is that. I'll just read it because I'm having a hard time processing. I said people who think animate better are missing the machine that chews up and spits out animation. The gameplay animator needs to learn to master that machine, and that is the game engine. And you need to master it in a way that's like not like you're still serving the game. You're serving the experience of the game. So it's not like, oh, if everybody just let animators run things, it'd be better. That's stupid. Like I'm not suggesting that, but just throwing your work over the fence and then hoping that it's going to maintain its integrity in all the different trials that people put it through I don't think is any kind of route for like groundbreaking animation quality.
Yeah. Put your hands into the engine, into the dirty part of the engines. Yeah.
Make sure that your little animation baby gets safely into its intended use, and make sure, and that's, but by doing that too, it's like you're working with all the other departments. It's like you go there and you bring it to the finish line and you look at design, you're like, is this good? You're like, yeah. And then you go to program, and not the first time, of course. Then you go to program, and you're like, is this good? And you're like, yeah. And like, okay, now you can go free, my little animation baby, but not before then.
So you have it's clear you have this with your experience, you have this overview of what game animation is. So you're now animation director at the Initiative, and prior to that, you said you were also animation director on Anthem Live.
Yeah, I wasn't there for very long, but I went for I joined Anthem near the end, and I was set up to be the animation director for Anthem Live. I was there for 9 months, but not much was happening with it, so I made a move.
Okay, so I was wondering what's the typical day of a animation director? What is it like to be an animation director?
That is something my answer is going to be totally different probably than any other animation directors. They have I was just talking to some other animators on Discord, and they were having a discussion that I just kind of like popped in and out of about like, oh, lead animators never animate. I was like, well, I feel like I never animate, but I'm a director, and it's a little different. But I feel like if I had a lead in place, which I'm hiring for, that lead should probably be animating. If I'm not animating and they're not animating, that's a whole lot of animation people not animating. And I know I'm telling you about what I don't do, but I think that's a big part of it. So you get into, especially now that we're doing the work from home, I think the biggest part of my job is air traffic control, of making sure that animation is at the table when we're making decisions that affect animation, but also like tasks are coming here and going out here, and it's a lot of production overlap. A lot of like managing people. I have the team that reports directly to me. I make decisions that involve animation. I try to stop decisions that are going to be very bad for animation or influence decisions positively that animation can help. If people are like, oh, we're gonna do 2 different animation sets, and one is like this and one is like this, I'm like, I've got something that will save you time. Being in the room when those kind of things happen. So, meetings, planning, decisions. The note that I wrote down here is I definitely spend more time in Microsoft Office than I do in Maya. So that's a thing. I think that's an important thing to consider too when people are like, oh, I want to be a lead animator, I want to be an animation director. It's like, make sure you know what you're getting into, because and I'm gonna dip into your next question a little bit, but I think being a lead or a director is really when you I'm gonna tag back to the mocap question too. It's like getting your desire to create has to transcend wanting to make individual bits of animation. Like, so first there's like, okay, I'm going to keyframe. I'm going to start with this blank scene, and then I'm going to make it into something. And there's like mocap. And like, oh, I can kind of corral this into something I want. And then we're like, I want to help multiple animators succeed. I want to make sure the animation of this game, not just my animations, but the animation of this game is pushing the boundaries. And I want to make sure that this game is doing everything that animation is using animation every way that it can be used. And that's going to require me not being an individual contributor anymore. How can I empower this game to be its best? How can I empower a team of animators to do their best work? But that's sort of the trade-off. So when people are like, oh, animation director is just the senior animator who makes more money, it's like, it's a different job. It's a totally different job. That said, you would probably find like there are animation directors who can get in there and animate. And I hope that I get to a point in our production that I can. Part of it's just we're building a studio, we're doing a lot of hiring. But there are almost certainly studios where they have more direct production help. If you have an animation producer who's only working with you, we've got good producers at my studio, but we don't have I do nothing but animation, which would, and really for that to be super effective would require like a former animator to do it. But that's, if somebody else is handling like the distribution of tasks and the management and things like that, my Camtasia's running out of hard drive space.
No worries. I think we got it covered on my side.
Okay. Yeah, I just made a giant video. Yeah, I gotta clean up my hard drive. Do that later.
Sorry for that.
No, it's okay. But yeah, so I think in some environments that are more like when you're not building the studio and you're not establishing the pipelines, that role is going to be more towards like really just focused on the quality of animation in the game. I would imagine that that's what the role looks like more at an Ubisoft studio where they are using engines that already exist, pipelines that already exist. Like that's a giant, seems like fairly well-oiled machine. They have processes in place. So I think at that point, an animation director probably spends a lot of more time with their animation team on the quality of the game animation and not all the other little things.
Yeah. So yeah, you kind of answered the next question, which was, what do you think are the skills required to become an animation director?
I think being able to deal with people is like the most important thing. Yes, that is still the most important thing. Another equally important thing, or almost as important thing, would be sorry. I should have grabbed a water before this.
You can go grab some water if you want.
Give me 1 second. Yeah.
I'll do the same.
Meanwhile, please enjoy a refreshing water break provided by Onion Skin and Ryan Duffin.
You prepared.
Yeah. More than last time.
Yeah. So I think the other biggest thing is like you have to be willing to. You're an umbrella for your team. Like you're gonna take the bad things that come towards your department, and you're gonna prevent your department from feeling that pain. You want to take and it's not. I don't mean the bad, like, oh, working for games is bad, but just like the crappy parts. Like how do I enable my team to be as happy with their work, as efficient with their work as possible? And that means like sometimes me being less efficient. So your goal has to be the success of your team and the success of your project, and not your personal glory. Like there's your glory is like a successful team. Like if the team succeeds, you succeed. If the team fails, it's your failure. So you kind of have to accept those stakes, I think.
Yeah, that's really interesting what you're saying, because it's really a lot about the team. So I was wondering also, I imagine animation directors are also human beings like other animators, but you know, sometimes we can have, yeah, we can have this image of the animation director being there, and you know, it can be a bit scary, maybe not the right word, but so yeah, do you sometimes maybe yeah, could be, do you sometimes doubt yourself like any normal animator would do, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are definitely people in leadership positions of all disciplines who have a very carefully cultivated image, and there are scary people, and sometimes there are people who work at being scary. Usually not, but I think I think the scariest directors are actually the ones who are hiding in insecurity.
Mm-hmm.
If it's like, I've seen that. Like I'm very lucky to work with the directors I work with at the initiative, because it's like everybody's pro enough that they're not trying to hide something by being a tyrant or a dictator.
Mm-hmm.
People are like, yeah, okay, I could be wrong, and it's a really good environment. And I try to be the same as like, do what I say, blah blah blah. Like that's a crappy way to run stuff. That's not a fun person to work for. So I mean, I kind of measure the success of a leader as like, this is my job interview answer. People are like, what makes a good leader? I'm like, would anybody choose to follow you? Would anybody that like I've been the lead of in the past want to work with me again? Like that's the best sign. Hold on, let me make sure that my computer is not about to crash with zero. Okay, no, it's fine, I think.
Cool.
Yep. All right. I thought I might have like 10 megs left or something.
You'll expense me your new computer.
No, sorry, I keep getting distracted by this stuff. I think that's the measure of good. Like, did you achieve the results that you set out to achieve? And would the people you brought along the way want to do it again with you? Mm-hmm. And then there's all kinds of other things about leadership, but I think that's kind of a good way to sum it up. If you have delivered what was expected, you have successfully managed up. And if people would do it again with you, then you've successfully managed down. I think that's the thing that a lot of people miss about leadership and management stuff, is that like, it's not just having the team like you, it's results. And so there is a lot of managing up. I don't know if that's seen as a negative term. I don't know. I don't think it of that, but like, how can you best represent your team to your manager?
Yeah. So
did I answer your question, or did I go on another?
Oh yeah,
no. I think it's really great. I think it's important to put an emphasis on the fact that animation director or leads, you know, people we can I don't know how to say it in English, but you know, who are there are also normal animators.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's like when I work on my personal stuff, I run it by friends that I trust, the same way that I did 10, 15, 20 years ago. Like, you don't get to a point, you shouldn't get to a point where you're like, I'm so good at this that I don't need anybody's feedback. That's a crappy director, I think. Maybe pissing off some directors by saying so, but I think like stonewalling people is a bad way to get direction, and I think that's when you get sort of people who are really insecure and trying to hide it. I admit, like, I don't think every decision I make is awesome. I question myself constantly, and it's really just like, what can I do that's best for the team? What can I do that's best for the project? And I don't think those aren't simple questions, and so there aren't simple answers. And so you should be like, oh, is this the right thing? I don't know. Yeah.
So going back to your resume, I've noticed you moved the countries quite a lot. We were speaking about this more human aspect of being a game animator. I wrote down that you worked in Sweden, Finland, Netherlands, of course, States, California. So how did this moving affected your career? You know, moving studios from studios, project to project.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been excellent for my career. It's certainly had a cost on my personal life. I was in the position to make those moves, but those would have been bigger decisions with other people involved. I mean, even to the point like there were other times in my life that I had considered moving and didn't, because of personal situations.
Mm-hmm.
I would say like that's how I got to work on like that's a huge credit to like why I was able to work on as many cool games as I've worked on, is that I wasn't stuck in my town.
Mm-hmm.
I was in Texas when I took the job at DICE. I was like, okay, there isn't a Battlefield 3 being made in town, but there is in Stockholm. So if I go there, I can do that. And so it's absolutely been a good thing. I don't think it's something that everybody needs to do if you have found a proper city that will allow you to have a stable life. Like Montreal is a great city for that. LA is a great city for that. Vancouver and Seattle, great cities. I mean, other than that, they're insanely expensive, but like you can live in LA, and there's enough jobs in LA that you won't ever have to leave if you don't want to. And same with Montreal, and I think same, lesser so, but still definitely the same with Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
It's normal for people in those cities to have a whole career in that city. Austin, even, and Stockholm, and Helsinki. Actually, like, there's a lot of game devs don't move around, but if you're open to it, I mean, for personal reasons entirely, I totally recommend it. I think it's like
from a professional perspective, also like meeting, feeling yourself of other ways of working because of the culture and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, no, I think that's huge in a bunch of ways. I mean, not just the different countries, but that has helped. I mean, it is different being in a meeting room of Finns than it is a meeting room of Americans. It's nice. It's like, but then there's like sometimes there will be only Americans in a Finnish conference, and then it's like these three people, myself included, like blah 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 blah, and the Finns just like. So, but it's good because it made me more self-aware.
Yeah.
So yes, I mean, I think that's even if you stay in the same city your whole career, I think it's really valuable to get different dev experiences. I think there are people who have had and there's a lot of great studios that people wouldn't want to leave, and I wouldn't fault people for that. Like, I don't think people should move just to move, but there's definitely a value in exposure to different cultures, both personally and professionally. Unless your studio is constantly making amazing hits and you're not killing yourself to do it, then there might be things that you can learn from other people. And I don't know of any studio that's like that place, like everybody's happy there, all their games are amazing, nobody crunches. Always something to learn from somebody else.
Yeah, and I guess also at some point the studio, has its habits and is kind of doing the same type of game, so you just want to maybe do FPS or work on a MMO, or I don't know.
Right. Yeah, that's huge, because like two of my biggest moves were when I left Treyarch. It was like I was starting to work on Spider-Man 3. That was my third Spider-Man game, and Treyarch made that team at Treyarch made 2 or 3 more Spider-Man games after that. Well, it wasn't that team; most of those people left. But like I was turning into Spider-Man developer. Like, okay, I've done 4 of these now, so maybe that's not what I should do anymore. And same with Battlefield. I ran into a friend crossing the street at GDC 2 years ago, and I think I was in the middle of working on Battlefield 5, and I was already like thinking like it's probably time to go. But this friend was like, "Oh, hey, are you still doing that like pew pew pew?" I'm like, "Yeah," and he's like, "Are you worried about getting pigeonholed?" I'm like, Yes, I am. And most of the people who were pinging me to join their studio at that point were like, "Do you want to come animate our guns?" And I was like, "Okay, I don't animate anybody's guns anymore." So that's sort of tangential, but I think it is to your point that like, if your studio is making the same kind of game again and again and again, make sure that game is keeping you relevant. It's like if you were if you were making a, I'm trying to phrase these in ways that don't insult people. Probably will, but if you were making Warcraft 2, let's say Warcraft 2, because nobody's making Warcraft 2 currently, but if you were making that game at that resolution, and that was the state of the art of your game, and that's what you've been doing for 15 years, and then your resume comes across, somebody's desk at Sony or Microsoft, and what you have on your demo reel is he's like, boop, 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 boop. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? Unless you've been making your personal work amazing, you've kind of been left behind a little bit. So
I see what you mean. I agree on that.
This is I have a very I am a single guy who has moved around a lot, and so I probably have a little cutthroat view on this, but I do think that it is important to cross-pollinate your work. If mobility and finding, there's not a lot of game jobs that wind up being like your whole career at one studio, so you should be making sure that you're staying relevant with whatever you're doing, I think.
Yeah, I think it's also curiosity is also part of what makes us creative, I think.
Yes.
So now it's the funny question time. Like last time, quick one. So Xbox One controller or DualShock 4?
Oops. Malfunction. Xbox.
Yeah, Xbox.
They didn't make me say that. No, I think it's a better controller. Just because of this.
Oh, you mean the stick being upper?
Yeah, exactly. This
Okay.
is so much nicer. Like I still have a harder time playing shooters on a PS 2, 3, 4 controller than I do on an Xbox controller. Maybe that's habit that I formed with Halo, with the Duke. But no, I mean, I had an S controller for my original Xbox. 360 was my primary console last generation. Interfaces straight with PC, so I think that's not a. I mean, I think like brand loyalty stuff is kind of like, I have both. They both have great games. They both but I like this controller better.
Okay, and so did you? It's a very serious question. Did you have to prove your skill on that Xbox controller when you did your interview at the initiative?
I did not. No. No, we're a very new studio, so it wasn't like a. Well, I won't get into any details there, but no, I did not have. I've never had to prove my skills on a controller for a job interview.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I've heard some places like I think Riot where it's good if you know well their games. What is it, League of Legends? I guess.
Yeah, it used to be they wouldn't hire you if you weren't like level 10 or something like that. And I think they've relaxed on that because like, oh, we got the best accountant in the world, and they're like, I don't care about League. It's like, let him be your accountant. Come on, it's fine.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I think it's different of like, I mean, I've absolutely been in interviews where like it's important to be able to talk the talk.
Yeah.
What do you think about the animation of this game? If you're like, I don't know, I've never seen it. I've never seen that one either. I've never seen that one either. That's the important part.
Yeah.
But like being a great game player, being like super hardcore or leader or anything is not super relevant to being a great game animator, as long as you can understand what a game needs.
Yeah.
And communicate with the people who are, working to make it whatever it's supposed to be.
It is useful though after Friday meetings when everyone gets a beer and you get to negotiate a thing you want to push in the engine with your programmer around the Halo match.
No, that was one of the best things about working on DICE is like, we're making this 64 player game, and like, right, Friday play tests, or they do it a lot more than that. We play tested a lot, but it's like you get a bunch of people in the studio just jump in, and sometimes there's beers, and it's I mean, obviously like QA were the ones who always kick everybody's ass.
Yeah.
But that was like, I was pretty decent on Battlefield 4. I was in the top third generally on my team. We had an effects artist who was like usually pretty high up there. He was the guy who hated how slow the reloads were, but he was good. A UI artist who's really good. Like it was cool, and it's like QA was always just murdering everybody at the top, and then everybody else was like, some people are good and some people are like, eh, but they stick it out.
I can imagine. So yeah, I've only got two final questions for you, that are a bit more relaxed, but still about game animation. What are your three, in recent memory, top games when it comes to game animation?
Okay, so I wrote this down from last time because this is hard to think of off the cuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the order I wrote them, the game Ghost Trick, which it was a DS game, and I think it was on mobile as well. But it was basically just like, you could tell there was an animator at the table when they were figuring out what this game is going to be, or they were just like, I don't know, make this happen and we'll trust you, because that game is such a flex for animation as style. Like every character has like a funny walk and like a weird fidget. There's like a guy who like break dances or not break dances, but like moonwalks, and it's just like, that's so weird but awesome. So that was a really good game, and it just had so much style to it. And I think, especially as games have gotten more and more realistic, AAA games, people lose what animation can do for them in terms of style. Oh man,
I agree. A sense of fun sometimes.
Yeah,
I think you
yeah.
forget that.
Yes, exactly. Like animation started as like, this was Looney Tunes and stuff, and now it's just like soldier walk, rifle, split guy's head with a hatchet. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
we're not really using our full potential. So I think Ghost Trick did that. Yeah, I'm gonna add a fourth one in here, but
Yeah.
just real quick, I will say Team Fortress 2 wasn't so much pushing the bar. Like the animation was good, but that is as we're talking about like what different disciplines can do, to me Team Fortress 2 is the perfect harmony of art and design. Like that is fully people holding hands singing Kumbaya. Like the art is amazing, it holds up 12 years later.
Yeah.
They went with the stylized art direction that reads clear, strong silhouettes. It's a masterclass in like what games can look like. And it's still, when I got that game, I played it. I was in the beta for that game, and then I played the crap out of it, and then I moved, and my video card died, so I put in like this 5 generations old video card.
Oh yeah.
Team Fortress worked, and it held up, and it was totally playable. It was just like, it looked a little shittier, but because the art was so clean and strong, it was totally playable. It's just like it kills me that more games haven't copied that. There was a guy on Twitter, I don't remember his last name, Xavier. I don't know if he has his last name on Twitter, but anyway, he made this big rant post, 100 posts deep, of like why Team Fortress is so much better than Overwatch. And people are like, oh, Overwatch is like the modern Team Fortress. It's like, no, it's not. It's beautiful. Overwatch is a beautiful game, and it's a fun game, but it is not Team Fortress, because Team Fortress is the art is in full service of design, service and harmony. I don't even want to say service. They work together. Where Overwatch is like, that's cool art, and there's also gameplay, but they aren't lockstep. So that's related. That's my, so that doesn't count. So I'm going to answer 2 more. Cuphead.
Oh yeah.
In that, kind of for the same reason of Ghost Trick, in that it's like, by the way, remember what animation is. Remember what is possible with this medium, and we're only working in this tiniest little bit of the spectrum when we make realistic games. Or like Cuphead's like, whoa, I didn't know you could do that. It's like, yeah, you did. You just forgot. Ghost Trick, same thing. Whoa, everybody's like, people just have character in the way that they move. And you could do that, but most games don't. And then the last one was Assassin's Creed. Not to be too hipster on the animation stuff. Assassin's Creed was the game, before it was a full franchise. It was the game that was like, oh, what if we pay attention to how game animation works? How much better will the overall performance be if it's like crazy animation intensive, and not just like more animation, but just such a focus on the whole performance stringing together in a believable and grounded way. And this was like I didn't get in trouble, but I had there was that one of those tweets of like, what's your most controversial game opinion? And I tweeted a few, but one was like, some games are more responsive than they need to be, and that responsiveness is not the most important thing in every game. There are games that absolutely is, but like not every game needs like a 0 frame response time. That shouldn't always be the goal, because sometimes you can get better stuff. You can get different senses of weight. Assassin's Creed played well, and it's like it's just not as sharp as say Quake. I mean, it's not as sharp as a lot of games, but
Yeah.
the experience of Assassin's Creed running around was amazing, and that would not have been possible with like Twitch tuned values. It should be responsive in that things happen when you give input, but I think sometimes people mistake responsiveness as like, if I'm doing 0 to 100, that you should be instantly at 100. It's like, no, you definitely start moving towards 100 immediately. But what happens in between 0 and 100 depends a lot on the game you're making. And like Assassin's Creed is one that when they did change to root motion at some point to be physics like capsule driven instead of animation driven. And I remember seeing the interview where they were showcasing it. It's like, it totally looks the same. And you're looking at it, you're like, it totally does not look the same. It's not bad animation, but it's not as good.
Yeah, it's really funny you mentioned Assassin's Creed. It's actually especially the third one, the one that pushed me into game animation. Even the first one at the time, I was like, I don't know, 17 or something. I was like, oh, what is this game? So yeah, it's really funny to see how you were speaking prior to that about Team Fortress, the art and the design. That game has really, in its game animation, has really a big evolution of design and animation being like crossing almost like Maya curves, you know. When animation I feel is going down, design is going up, and then it's like, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
and that's the thing. It's I don't think that design has to be going down when that happens. It's just like for a game like Assassin's Creed, which is very experiential. It is not a Twitch game. It is not you win or lose by how quick you press a button. Or I mean, there's gameplay to it. It matters, but it's not it's not a pixel perfect, ultra precise. You know, the needs of like a competitive esports kind of game are very different than Assassin's Creed. And I think sometimes people think that everything needs to be that ultra precise esports thing of like, oh, I should already be there. Everything faster is always better. And yeah, I don't think it is. I don't think Assassin's Creed would have been a better game for that. It's like it was a groundbreaking game because it wasn't. And I think it just made people think about like, ooh, okay. I mean, Ubisoft was already making great animation, but that was the one that was like, we should probably start caring about this. I was like, animation, gameplay, animation, quality is starting to matter, and it's not going to be okay to make crappy looking stuff.
So I guess now I just have a final question. I see the light dimming in your apartment. So yeah, it's always the same question for every person I interview. Can you share with us an animation tip? It's a hard question, but
Sure. Well, I'll stick with kind of our theme from earlier. Like, don't be afraid of mocap. Like, embrace any productivity booster. You have more things in your head than you'll ever get out as a creative person. I believe anybody who's really driven in this industry is like that. And so what can you do to get things out of your head and get things done? Like, that's, if you like, oh, I'm gonna handcraft this building for 6 months, it's like you're probably gonna give up on it. Actually, you're probably gonna get distracted by something else. So like, how can you what are the tools you can use to get things done? Because that's the nothing's more satisfying. Like, okay, this is fun to massage keyframes and smooth curves and stuff like that, but really what like the reward of this industry is like ship stuff. Do it any methodology that makes you faster lets you ship more stuff, whether it's
Mhm.
for your work that makes you a more valuable employee. It makes you like, oh, you're the fast one. But in your own work, in your own life, like that's, oh, I'm going to make this short, like make it. I mean, and I'm not necessarily practicing what I preach here either, but this is advice that I think everybody, including myself, needs to take. Like, be focused on getting quality things done. There's no glory in like taking twice as long to drag a mouse across the screen as there is using a hotkey. And if you're making photorealistic motion, start with photo source or photogrammetry, or if you've got realistic motion, start with motion capture.
Yeah, yeah.
One, but embrace productivity boosters is my shortest way to put
Think
that.
smart.
Yes, exactly. Work smarter, not harder.
Cool. Work smarter than ever. Very, very good ending catchphrase. Cool. But I think that's it, man. Thank you very much for taking the time to do a second time this interview.
No worries. I hope all the technical issues work out this time, and if you need the first half of the interview before my hard drive filled up, I got you covered.
Thanks. Yeah, I think now have a great night, and take care of yourself during those sadly COVID-19 times.
Yes, you too.
Thanks, man.
All right, take care.
Bye. See you guys.